What's happening, guys? Welcome back to another episode of We the People, where the people come for the absolute truth. And we ain't on no fake conservatism stuff. One of the guys that I follow and give huge kudos to is a gentleman named Mark Dice. Mark Dice is one of the realest commentators, conservatives that I know. I would like to get a couple of Mark Dice's books and read up on them and learn about what real, because I'm new to the conservative party, right? I don't want to be led the wrong way. I don't want to go down the rhino path, right? And I don't want to go down that conservative movement that is still on a destructive road for the United States, right? So I'd like to get me a couple of Mark Dice's books and actually read up on conservatism a little bit. I've been watching some of his videos and I've learned a lot. Now, I don't just take from Mark Dice, right? I've watched like Mark Levin and, I trip out off of some of the things that were pointed out about Mark Levin, and it's true. Mark Levin, if you call him a neocon, he says that's anti-Semite. You're being an anti-Semite. An anti-Semite by calling somebody a neocon. Well, Mark Dice is a neocon. I'm not Mark Dice. Excuse me, Mark. I apologize for that from the bottom of my heart. Mark Levin is a neocon. Right? He's one that pushes that we should back Israel 100%. And if you don't back Israel 100%, then you are an anti-Semite. Right? And I trip off of that. Like Candace Owens, she got thrown out of the Daily Wire because, she didn't believe that we should back Israel and everything that they do. Technically, they say she didn't, but we know she did, right? Candace Owens has been one of the biggest outspoken voices of things like that, and she is a real conservative. She spoke out about the Black Lives movement, which needed to be spoke out about. So did Mark Dice. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland, so I'm where they kicked it off at with Freddie Gray, which was a huge mistake because, Freddie Gray he wasn't the greatest of all, and then his mom, as far as I know, spent the money on crack anyway, so allegedly. So, I gotta watch what I say. So let's get on with this real quick, and I want to listen to Marco Rubio tear into a couple of these I don't know, Democrats.
Biden secured from the Middle East during his entire 4 years in the White House.
Our tools and alliances were vital to our national security. And today, Secretary Rubio is here to defend an 84% cut of the foreign affairs budget. How does hollowing out our State Department and dismantling USAID help us compete with China? How does the America Alone budget project American strength? On human rights, the contrast is even starker. Senator Rubio built his political brand on the cause of freedom and dignity. You condemned autocrats in Caracas, Havana, and Beijing for silencing dissent. But Secretary Rubio, he looks the other way when strongmen commit similar abuses. Secretary Rubio even defied a Supreme Court order to facilitate the return of a wrongly detained spouse of an American citizen. And when Senator Rubio became the first Hispanic American to serve as Secretary of State, he made sure to pull
That's some bold lies.
up behind him.
Bold remarks.
Dismantling efforts to making hiring and promotion fair, as you call it, wokeness, you have unlawfully dismantled programs designed to address decades of historical exclusion. These are not political experiments. They were congressionally supported efforts rooted in bipartisan recognition that our diplomatic corps must reflect the diversity and the strength of the nation it represents abroad. These are initiatives that Senator Rubio supported. You replaced experienced career employees with ideologues and political loyalists. Under your watch, sir, America's diplomatic and development corps have suffered the greatest brain drain in history, and America has been weakened and made more isolated by the actions of an administration that has abandoned its allies, cozied up to dictators, and conducted a foreign policy driven not by interests of the American people, but in support of the personal enrichment of the president and his family. And with that, I yield.
I thank the ranking member for his opening statement. I would also thank the 20 members of this committee who voted in the 2024 appropriations to make sure that the Secretary and the administration had the authority to reorganize the State Department. And other members of this committee are reminded that opening statements may be submitted for the record. We are pleased to have Secretary of State Marco Rubio before us today. Your full statements will be made a part of the record, and I'll ask you to keep your spoken remarks to 5 minutes in order to allow time for members' questions. And I now am proud to recognize Secretary Rubio for any opening statement that you may have.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Let it go
today. I'll try to stay under the 5 minutes.
Get him, Pitbull.
Get time for questions here. So when I took this job, and I said this during my confirmation hearing, the most important thing we need to do is return American foreign policy to be centered on our nation.
I just want to stop right there, and I want to say this, right? Watch a master at work. This is why Trump picked him to be what he is. Okay? This is why Trump picked him to be what he is. It's either going to be Vance or Rubio that's the next president, one or the other. Okay? Or you might have Vance as president and Rubio as vice president, and then Rubio step up to be president after that. Or you might have, because of age difference, you might have Rubio be president and Vance be vice president again, or maybe he can't do that. He may not be able to be vice president again, but he can be Secretary of State and then be president. But usually, vice president steps up to become president, or at least run for president. And I would definitely think J.D. Vance is president material. And so is Marco Rubio. So that's a hard one. I mean, the Republican Party has a huge talent of great men right now. It's amazing to me. And the Democratic Party is just hugely lost. I mean, aimlessly wandering in the light, right? They've blown everything up around all of us. So there's a huge amount of light. They just can't see what they need to see. They're blind to the light.
Find things that are happening on the planet. America cannot solve every single one of them. What we need to focus on is prioritizing our foreign policy to those areas that are in our national interest. Now, we will still remain the largest contributor of foreign aid and humanitarian assistance on this planet by far. The United States, even under the budget that's before you today, and the changes we have made, will still contribute more in foreign aid than the next 10 countries combined. Than the entire OECD. The next closest country is not China, it's Germany, and it's way behind us, even now. But that foreign aid has to be geared towards our national interests. We need to design a State Department that delivers on that. Yes, we canceled a bunch of contracts in USAID. Some were stupid and outrageous. Others didn't serve the national interest, and others we kept. And we are folding it under the Department of State. And you know why? Because we want it to be part of the toolbox of foreign policy. Not a standalone. It is not charity. Foreign aid is not charity. It is designed to further the national interest of the United States. So we will do humanitarian assistance. We will do food assistance. We will do developmental assistance. And we will do security assistance. But we will do it driven by our embassies and our regional bureaus. Because what those issues mean look very different in Guatemala than they may in Chad or in Kenya or in some other part of the world in the Indo-Pacific. And so one of the things that we have tried to do in our reorganization is drive power and influence on policy making and decision making to the regional bureaus and ultimately to our embassies. Our embassies, our ambassadors are the front line of American foreign policy. The most important thing I do every single day is not read memos, it's read cables. Every night I get 10, 15 select cables from stations around the world, different embassies. The best ideas in that building come from the ground up from our embassies. Now, I want to tell you something else. Look, I did serve in the Senate for a long time, so this is a new job to me. When I got there, I'd get a memo. I still get these memos. I should have brought one today. In order for an idea to reach me, a decision to reach the Secretary of State, some of these things have to be checked off by 40 people, 40 boxes. And any one of these people has a question, they can hold it up before the idea even ever gets to me. Now, that sounds like a crazy thing to begin with. We can't afford it in the 21st century. We have to be able to move very quickly. And a case in point is what happened last week. Syria, under a new authority, granted people with some checkered background, is on the verge of collapse potentially. And if it collapses, it will devolve into civil war. And civil war will mean that it will become a playground for ISIS and other jihadists, not to mention Iranian influence coming back in. So there's no guarantee that by outreach and working with the transitional authority in Syria, things are going to work out. It may work out, it may not work out. But if we don't reach out and try, it's guaranteed to not work out. And so we had to move very quickly to action that. If we had not done sanctions relief last week, and now the EU has followed suit, then our partners in the region could not have provided donor dollars so that transitional authority could try to stabilize its governance of the country. That place could have collapsed within weeks and become an ISIS playground once again. There is no way that a traditional system could have delivered on that. It would have gone to the interagency. It would have gone to 6 to 9 months of debate. Any individual could have held it up with an information hold, and we never would have acted. We can't afford it. The world moves too quickly. And so we need to drive policy from the ground up, from our embassies and our regional bureaus, and that's what we're doing. And that's what we're doing. On the last point I would make about foreign aid has to be part of our portfolio, part of what we do, and it has to be consistent with our agenda in any region of the world or any country. And oftentimes you will find, and maybe some of you have found when you travel, you go talk to an ambassador and they will tell you what USAID was pushing and what they are pushing in the country are not just different, they're in contradiction. And in many cases, USAID programs were undermining the mission of the embassy. That's a fact. And I've heard that over and over again. I've heard it in the Caribbean basin, and I've heard it in other parts of the world.
So in other words, what they were doing was they was using USAID as a soft power, soft lien, right? Look, if you want this money, if you want this $26.9 billion, right? If you want this $8.12 billion, right? It's always billion, right? If you want that money, and you're going to do what we told you to do. Case in point, President Trump used the money to Ukraine as a soft lien before to get them to do what he needed them to do to keep us away from war, right? The Democrats just want to throw money at people here, but we want you to. And here's the thing: they use it as a soft lien, but it's like they're using it to destroy cultures and people. What type of people want to do this? Why do you want to destroy cultures, races, and people? If you listen to Hillary Clinton, she says that it's disgusting that the Republican Party believes in Project 2025 because it believes in a nuclear family. Why should women be here to have more babies? That's all you're used for, is having more babies. Well, no. That is a lie to contradict what God says, okay? Hillary is not God, and remember that. Even though she may think that she is not. And we need people like Marco Rubio to set these things straight, because I'm quite sure a lot of it went down under Secretary Clinton, right? Where she would go in and tell people that if you don't do this and do this and do this and do this, you ain't getting that money. I mean, look what she did with Haiti, right? The Clinton Foundation in Haiti, right? Haiti's still in a shambles, but they got all that money for Haiti. Where'd it go? Oh, Hillary's pocket. She learned the best to be a humanitarian from the best of them all, George Soros. Right? So we need people like Secretary of State Marco Rubio. We need people like him. We need people like J.D. Vance. And if we didn't have President Trump to bring it all together, we would be in trouble right now. We would have Kamala Harris as president, right? And we would never have another Republican president again. We would have never had it again. They would have made sure that. Remember, they look at the Republican Party as the enemy. The Republican Party looks at the Democratic Party as the opposition party. You know, the other side of the coin. Like, we're this side of the coin and they're that side of the coin. You know what I'm saying? But, you know, you never really heard the Republican Party demonize the Democratic Party, but you always hear the Democrats demonize the Republicans. Right? And then pay attention to the things that the Republicans do versus that the Democrats do. Republicans don't burn cities down. The worst thing that we had was January 6th. And that's because the people knew that they stole the election and they was pissed off from being ripped off over and over and over again. We were supposed to have Trump back in office again, but we're glad we didn't. Let me tell you something. Y'all messed up. We're glad we didn't. Because look at him now. It wasn't meant to be then, but it is now. And look at what's being done. Look at what he's doing. And we're going to keep fighting for him every step of the way. Let's go, Trump. We don't stop fighting, Trump. Fight, fight, fight all the way. We're going to keep it going. And this country is going back to the people like it was supposed to. The people will have its voice again because of our president, President Donald J. Trump. Because of people like Marco Rubio, because of people like Vice President Vance, because of people like Tom Homan, because of Caroline Leavitt, because of Steve, oh no. Oh, Steven, I'm so sorry, Steven. Y'all know who I'm talking about. I can't believe I just forgot his last name, man. That's crazy. He's one of the best ones out of them all. Steven mows him down. I can't remember his last name, though. But, so I want to just give thanks. And I want to say thank you to God Almighty, man, because we'd have been in trouble, people. I don't know if you've ever sat down and really analyzed the situation. But look at what they're doing because they didn't get power. Imagine if they would have gotten power, right? The first time around when we picked Trump, we got COVID, right? We got COVID and then Biden. Look how many people died because of COVID. COVID was one of them things that didn't have to happen, but it did. Right. Man. Just a couple thoughts, man. Tell me what you think down in the comments, man. You know, if you got anything that I said that you may disagree with, leave me a comment, please. I really appreciate it, man. I love a good conversation. I think that's what this is supposed to be about. Great men of great ideas having great conversations to bring great outcomes.
Cooperation, we still have some more work to do on migration, but they've been cooperative.
Chair now recognizes Ranking Member Beats.
Look at him. Tight. Tight. Spiffy. Get him.
Trying to figure something out. I know you said you read a lot of cables every day. And I know that when you first got sworn in at your confirmation hearing, you stated that being the Secretary of State would be an extraordinary responsibility. Here we are 4 minutes later, reading cables every day. How much time do you spend at the State Department?
How much what?
How much time?
How I spend
at the State Department?
Almost every day. If I'm in the country, I travel a lot. It's part of the job.
I agree. I understand. But now you have 4 jobs, don't you? Now you're not only the Secretary of State, you are also the acting USAID administrator.
Because he can walk and chew bubblegum at the same time, Bubba.
Archivist.
Representative
You're
Meeks.
also the interim national security advisor.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot spend every day at the State Department and then neglect your other jobs.
Why not? He could do them all from there.
Ability to do.
He could do them all from there. Why is he?
So how much time do you spend at the other jobs if you spend every day at the State Department?
Well, now you know why I can't offer you 8 hours today to answer every question on this committee, which you were complaining about earlier. Look, here's the thing. All those jobs are being done. USAID largely has been
But the
folded.
jobs,
Do you want my answer? Do you want to?
No, I just want to know this. Did you anticipate or did you want, when you were sworn in to be the Secretary of State, do you want to have the jobs of
No, I did not.
USAID administrator?
No, I did not apply for those jobs.
Did not apply
I
for
was
them.
asked to serve in those roles, and I'm happy to do it. The archives are doing great. The USAID has been folded under state, so it's a sort of a duplicative role. And the National Security Advisor, which is on an interim basis, has tremendous overlap with what we're doing at the State Department.
But then why not get rid of all of them and just put everything under you? Get rid of all those departments. If it's not crucial to have someone every day at the as a national security advisor, you folded in USAID, you saying the archives is fine, get rid of them. Wouldn't that be then waste? Based upon how you have determined there's waste, based upon your testimony earlier, in some of these other departments, they were duplicative. So if it's duplicative, then get rid of them.
Well, you would have to pass a law to do that if you want to combine those 4 offices in your reorg.
Well, look, that hasn't stopped you in the past because the law requires you to consult
Look at this.
Congress on any proposed reorganization of USAID or the State Department. That hasn't happened. I agree. It should be the Congress's responsibility. Your staff claimed, quote, that you've extensively consulted
Wait for
Congress on your plan to fold USAID into state.
Wait for it.
Did not happen. All we members have gotten was 1 hour of a meeting with Pete Morocco, who you later fired and who couldn't answer our most basic questions about the aid freeze. And you've ignored
Wait for it.
thus far. That's why I want to know about you. You've ignored nearly 20 letters from this committee
Wait for it.
seeking information about who sent, since you took office, as well as, we spoke one time,
Wait for it.
consulting this committee at all. I don't call that extensive consultation. So you're right. Things that you've done should be in collaboration with the United States Congress. But surely the USAID and all of these other things Congress was not consulted one time. Senator Rubio would have demanded it.
Well, we've complied with every part of the law. Every single part of the law has been complied with, including you, for example, have written us 16 letters. You've been briefed on 7 of them. Some of them we couldn't answer, and we told you why we couldn't answer because they were subject to litigation. 4, you've gotten answers in writing, and 5 we've gotten just in the last few days. Well, 16 letters. I've been there 17 weeks. You write me a letter
I'm
a
going to
week.
yield my last 48 seconds to Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Rubio, thank you for being here. Corruption is determined by our democracy, is detrimental to our democracy, and the Trump administration has moved swiftly to scale back, reverse, and dismantle various guardrails that protect Americans from corruption. We have now a plane that he's accepting by a foreign government. His
God.
is doing business deals with a foreign government. And your office has authorized Elon Musk company Starlink to do.
Do you know, they keep bringing that up, right? President Trump's, all his funds are frozen, right? He's the most transparent president we've ever had, all right? So what, he might meet with somebody. That don't mean nothing. Nothing. You're worrying about President Trump, but you didn't worry about Joe Biden and what Hunter Biden was doing not one time. You didn't stop Anthony Fauci. You didn't stop nothing. But you keep on bringing up this bull crap that Trump's doing, and Trump is not doing nothing against the law. You are wasting the taxpayers' money. You should be fired, Representative Johnson. All of you. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Business in at least 5 African countries and many, many others. My question is, with the dismantling of the enforcement of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act and many other things, what efforts are you doing as Secretary of State to make sure that our government is free from improper foreign influence over our policy?
I mean, the examples you've given, Starlink's all over the world. There isn't a country in the world now that doesn't have Starlink for the most part. They have Starlink in Syria. We certainly didn't help them land that deal, but they've got Starlink's a global company that's present everywhere and continues to grow because they provide a very unique service no one else provides. I'm not aware of any plane that's been given. I know the media reports about it. I know that the Air Force One that's scheduled to be delivered is like 5 years off balance. So they went to Boeing and this is the extent of what I know about this plane. I've never seen it. They went to Boeing and said, are there any planes that fit the bill? Boeing produced a list of planes that they'd sold over the last few years. One of them happened to be a Qatar. You'd have to ask the Department of Defense because that would go to the Air Force. That would not come to the State Department. Beyond that, look, we're involved in helping businesses expand all over the world. There isn't a single day that we aren't involved in helping an American company gain access to a market, and we'll continue to do so. As far as people involved in our government that are doing that, I'm not aware of anyone on the cabinet or in the president's White House that's using the State Department to expand their personal portfolio. And if they are, we wouldn't help them do that. But no one's ever asked us to do that. So I think we're following the law with regard to what we're doing to prevent corruption.
So is the answer.
Chair recognizes Representative Smith from New Jersey.
And if they wasn't, you best believe this would be impeachment proceedings.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First of all, it was an honor, Mr. Secretary, to serve with you as co-chair of the China Commission. We did so much together. I want to thank you.
Hey, guys, I want to pause real quick to say thank you for watching, right? And if you want to help the channel out, please subscribe to the channel and make sure you hit that like button. That like button helps us to get further in the algorithm. I'm not no big fish. I'm a little guy, but I'm going to keep it real with you 100. All right, the best way I know how to. I'm a working man just like you. But I take my time to bring these videos to you because I feel like the truth needs to be out there. And it's going to take the little people to do it, not the big people. It's going to take the little people with the little voices to get out there and amplify their voices and scream as loud as you can to the top of the roofs that you want to be heard. And we, the people, want to be heard. Thanks for watching, guys.
For that leadership, it's extraordinary. I want to thank you. You're the sponsor of the bill. I would appeal to you if you could. It passed the House 406-1. If we could get it out of the Senate, it would hopefully clamp down on this egregious human rights abuse in China. And it's a global bill. It would outlaw forced organ harvesting profoundly with real penalties up to 20 years in prison for those who are part of that supply chain. But it would most directly affect Xi Jinping and the people who are doing this horrific abuse.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. On obviously the organ harvesting, China plays a concerning role in that regard, and we would obviously be helpful in any way we can in helping you pass that in the Senate. Certainly putting a good word for
organ harvesting, bro.
China,
can you believe we even have to have this in Congress?
And there are places
organ harvesting.
Reports of that. And that's something that's going to be called out as well. As far as Azerbaijan is concerned, our core focus has been on trying to establish a peace between Azerbaijan and Armenia. There's a real risk there of conflict that we're trying to prevent from happening. Our teams have been very engaged in that regard and trying to make something come about and prevent an armed intervention there. And obviously within the context of those conversations, the issues you raised about prisoners and human rights are critical to it. And again, another example of where we want to use our embassies. So when we talk about people who will complain, well, you got rid of the Human Rights Office and the functional bureaus, it's because it's being transferred to the regional bureaus. And our regional bureaus will not just have a focus on human rights within the bureau, but so will our embassy. And so that is the human rights issue with regards to Azerbaijan. And so that is what our embassy will be focused on pushing. It's different from what the human rights issue might be in another part of the world. But we think it's important to have people on the front line prioritizing these issues as part of our holistic approach. You've outlined it correctly. We do want to have, we may not agree with the system of government. We may wish it were different. But the truth of the matter is that we have to deal with countries in many cases that perhaps don't have ideal models, but we have to deal with them in our national interest. And we need to balance all of these things together, our national interest and diplomacy, without surrendering and finding opportunities to further interests such as human rights. And Azerbaijan provides us an opportunity to do that in the context of the broader peace that we're trying to establish there.
Finally, almost out of time, yesterday I chaired a hearing on the global problem of anti-Semitism and how it's getting worse. It was my 18th hearing on it. We had Ed Deutsch, who is the leader here when he was in Congress. as one of her witnesses. And I just want to say thank you for what you're doing vis-a-vis Israel and what you're doing to try to